Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. I know it's been a while since I released a video, so I'm actually working on a tutorial on how to make the Leviathan Axe from God of War. This is a very low poly version of that axe, and I'm currently developing it basically. The model itself is almost finished. The tutorial videos are also almost finished. The one thing that I have not finished yet is the intro for it. And in this video, I want to present a bit of a glimpse of what I'm working on and how I've achieved some lightning effects using Blender and just using what I would call a shortcut in creating some, I would say, artistic looking lighting effects, which don't really use any geometry. They just use flat planes. It's something that I found to be very useful for my project because I could really, I definitely use it in such a way that it's really helped the project to speed it up, so I wouldn't have to make the geometry of lighting spikes and so on. In this video, you won't be able to see the full sort of quality of it unless you stick to the end and see a glimpse of my intro, which I think everybody will like. But basically, it's going to be using this model. That intro is going to use this model as it's in an animation that you'll be able to see. But in this particular video, I'm just showing you how I've gone about doing the lightning bolt and some of the lighting effects spinning around the axe. I know this is an axe that's made out of mainly it's got ice powers, but in my context, I wanted to really add all these lighting effects to it. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, and if you learn something, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, press the bell button to be notified when I release new content. I hope to really help you guys out. I'm new to Blender. I'm learning things. And if you guys have any sort of, any tips you can give me, please help me out, as I want to learn Blender and use it just as much as I use other software like ZBrush and 3ds Max. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you just a bit. Right, okay, so let's start off in Blender. So basically I've got Blender and Substance Painter opened. When we enter Blender, we were presented with these basically free items: the camera, cube, and light. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press X on the keyboard and delete our cube as we don't need it. Then we'll press Shift A on the keyboard to then get this menu where we can add meshes and other such things. Or you can go up here and press the button, the Add button, and then go to Mesh, and let's select a plane. So this is basically our plane. It's a square plane, which is exactly what we need for our first test. Our first item, basically. So what I want to do right now is I want to export this plane. So click File, Export, and then export it as an OBJ. Nothing else, just OBJ. And then it will, ask you where you want to save it. I'm just gonna go on my working file in here, and I'm just gonna make a new folder for this tutorial. So now I've saved that item in there. Now I'll go to Substance Painter, basically, and I'll click the File, File, New, increase the resolution to 2K. I don't need the 4K. Make sure you set it up to OpenGL, and then press. I've got this PBR Metal Roughness Alpha Blend selected as a template. Just do that. And then press the select button here in order to basically get our mesh loaded. And for some reason I can't see it in here. Let me just go back to Blender. So File, Export, Export as, oh sorry, I think I've selected the wrong output file. Wavefront, yeah, this is the one, okay. So export OBJ, and now when I go back in here, this is what it's called. It's called Untitled. Look, this is obviously, when you do this, you can name it to whatever you want. It's not really a problem. So I've opened it, and now Substance Painter will automatically create a UV map for it as well. So I don't have to worry about any of that, and it's a flat plane anyway, so not really a lot to talk about in that regard. Right, so one of the things that we want to do right now is we want to start adding some, you know, add some the lighting texture basically on it. So if we go to our layers over here, we've got a layer created and we need to add a fill layer on top of that. Now this fill layer, I'm going to drop it below the normal layer, the painting layer. And then with the fill layer selected, on the right side here, I've got all these maps. I've got opacity and emission active. So basically, based on the template that I've selected at the beginning, it offers me these two maps already, so I don't have to add them. And now what I want to do is I want to take the opacity to the minimum, so that makes our mesh disappear. And then we, well, that's it. We just do that to the opacity and we don't do anything else at this stage. We'll then select layer over here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and make sure we got opacity on and emission on as well. Then for opacity, I would like to take this to, you know, leave this as to maximum, and then I want to click the emissive color down here, and I'll just give it a bluish tint, something like that, you know, whatever color suits your needs. And once I've got all of that done, I'm then going to press the alphas over here, and then I'm just going to look for an alpha that I can use. Now, it's very important to know that you can use any sort of alpha that you want, and we want to create a lightning effect, so you could get alphas off the internet with lightning. Now, Substance Painter does come with something called cracks, or crack cells, or whatever you want to use. So that's basically the brush. So when I press it over here, you can see how it's now added this effect, yeah? One thing that we can also do is to go into the display options over here and just play with the, oh, where was it now? Right, over here, activate post effects, and then activate glare. And if we open it, we'll be able to now play a bit with the options in here. So we can decrease the threshold, leave the remap factor where it is, but just we can get this luminance, you know, higher or lower, yeah? So I'm going to keep the luminance around there, but the one thing that we haven't done yet is to go into the shader options and just increase our emissive intensity. So now you can see that really popping out basically. So I'm just going to delete this brush stroke, and I'm going to use something like this. It's a lot, well, sorry, that's not the one either. What I want to do actually, I'll go into brushes, and I'll find the alpha from here. So I've got this Kyle Concrete, yeah. So you can see how that's creating this sort of effect. I know these are cracks, so they're not exactly lightning, but they will work for our intended purpose. So the important thing here is to add some, you know, add these cracks in over here, something like that. Just make sure they don't really touch the edge, you know, that will break the immersion, so to speak. So once we've added all of that in there, that should work for us. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to press File, Export Mesh. I'm just going to replace that one. Save, yes, I want to replace it. And also we go to File, Export Textures, and we will select the same folder that we basically been in. So tutorial over here, select folder. Make sure they go to 4K, and then before you press export, go to configuration, and what I like to do is I like to press this one here, standard. So it's called standard the standard metallic, so it gives us these maps, and then go back to export and press the export button. Now this should be fairly quickly, as these maps, you know, they're not very intricate in any way. You know, we've just added some cracks on a surface. And what we want to do now is we want to bring these maps over into Blender and map them to our mesh that we're going to import back in, basically. So now we're back in Blender. I'm just going to delete this plane, and I'm going to press File, Import, and press the Wavefront OBJ. I'm then gonna go to where I've saved my file, and I'm gonna make sure, you know, because we replaced that one, it's not gonna be a problem to make sure that we've imported the right one. Okay, so now we've got this in, and we need to add the maps. So one thing that I'm gonna do is I am going to press the animation button up here, as we are going to animate this as well. So and now that I've got these two screens on, I've got this, you know, camera set up in here, which is fine. What I want to do is actually I'm going to get a third screen here. I'm going to make it like so. And I'm going to go up here and press the shader editor. Just make sure you've got the mesh selected. So this is the material. This is the principal material that it feeds into, you know, all the maps that feed into our actual material of our mesh. So now what I want to do is I want to start dragging these in. I'm just going to bring the folder over, which is this one here. All we need from this is the base color, and then we also need our emissive. Yeah, so these are the only two maps that we're going to be working with. So one of the things that you may be thinking now is, well, you know, let's just put in the emissive over here, right? Oh, by the way, to see the effect over here, we need to press either this option for shading, or viewport shading, or we can press this option for rendering, basically. What I want to also do is make sure that the render is set to Eevee, which it is, and that we've got bloom active as well. Let's just crank up the intensity a little bit. It doesn't really do anything at the moment because we haven't you know, played with the settings yet. So we added the emission over there, and now we've got the color, and we'll just put it over here. Now you can see we've got a problem. We need our lighting to be transparent. So we'll pick the alpha from here and connect it to the alpha channel. And this is what happens basically. And the reason for that is because we haven't really set up the emission properly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a new node. We're going to add a mix shader node, and we'll put it down here. I'm then going to take my emissive map, and I want to disconnect it, and I want to add an emission map. By pressing Shift A on the keyboard, it opens that menu where I can search for new nodes. So I've just put an emission over there. I'm going to connect the color to color, and then I'm going to connect the emission to the first shader over here. And now what I want to do is I want to get this material, this principled, sorry, not material, this you know, library of materials, and connect it over into the mix shader. And then the mix shader will be connected to the surface of the model. And basically this is the effect that we are getting. Now one thing to note is that we still don't have a, you know, the blending is still not allowing the opacity to come through. So we'll go on the right side over here, we'll click the material, and then we've got a option over here called blend mode. So we change that to alpha blend. And now you can already see that we can see through the material basically. So one of the things that we can do is, you know, we can crank the intensity up. If we play with this FAC here for the mixing of the shaders, you can see how it's now taking that sort of effect out of the way. This panel basically you're seeing. So we can increase the emissive. We can again play with the fact, you know, if you take that to the minimum, it will obviously take the whole thing out. But we do have a problem there, so we're just going to keep it around there for now. There are some settings in here that you can play with to basically get this completely transparent. I think there was an option in here, so we got the snow, not show back phase. Right, okay, so let's just leave it for now. Let's just leave it like that. We want our emissive to, you know, be cranked up to this amount. Well, whatever you want to do in there. And then what we also want to do, we want to start creating a generator for our, you know, for our lighting effect. So One thing that I would like to do is to click on the world button over here and change the background color to something very dark, and this will help with making that plane sort of disappear, fade away. So I've got this lightning like this, and now I want to create a generator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press shift and right click on somewhere in the canvas, and then we'll move the 3D cursor, and then I'm going to press the add button, mesh plane. Okay, so we've got this plane over here. We don't need it to be that big, so I'm just going to go into these settings here for the scale, and I'm going to change all of them. So if you hold the left click and drag down, you will select all of these, and now if you go to the left, we can sort of like change all these settings at the same time. So now I've done that, and what I want to do is I want to go over here and add a new particle generator, the particle emitter basically. And we want to go into render and change from halo to object, and then we've got this instance object, press that button and then select the untitled, which is basically this mesh over here. Right, okay. Now if we press play on our, let's just put the frames to 100, yeah, the keyframes to 100. So if we press play now on our bar, you can actually, I'll just move over here, but you can now see the lightning being generated, which is obviously not looking very good at the minute, but that's fine. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do is we want to decrease the number of generated lightning to, let's say, 50. We then want to decrease their lifetime to something like 3 seconds. We want to go to scale and just increase that scale to, make it pretty big basically. I'm just gonna drag this along here so you can see it better. This is basically our animation plane. We then want to make sure that this plane is not being shown, so we'll go to our material over here, make sure we just add a material on top by pressing that plus button. And when we go to where was it now? Oh, we have to press new over there so we can get a an option in there. Oh, sorry about that. I was dealing with the wrong setting. I had to press this world setting here to add a material. Right, now we've got a material on the actual mesh, on the plane mesh, and then we will change this to alpha blending and just take the alpha down. So now that plane has disappeared. Right, okay, back to our particles. So this is what we've got right now. Yeah, you can see this jumping around back and forth, which is fine. We've got a scale randomness, so we can have it scale up. Then we've got a velocity, and a rotation to the velocity, which I want to play with. So the first thing we're going to do is randomize this effect over here. Yeah. And then we've got a dynamic button where we can, again, just sort of play with these settings. So now we might want to go to 100 of these, yeah, to 100 of these lightning effects. We also want to go into the render settings over here, and on the bloom we want to increase maybe the intensity of it a little bit. Right, let me just play with this a little bit in here. So that's I just don't like the fact that we don't have a lot of intensity going on. So that could be because of the material. So we'll just press on the plane again to go in here and maybe give it like 2000 intensity. Yeah, so see, that's basically how we started lighting up the scene now. You can see the transitions, which aren't spectacular basically, looking at this. But we can definitely play with some more settings in the particle field on the plane. So understand that the particle settings are on the actual plane that's generating it, not on the item generated. So we've got this again, these velocity settings that you want to play with, and just basically get the effect that you want. You can for example, take the rotation out of it completely, and now it generates into one place. Yeah, but it's generated in such a way that it's always flat and facing the same way. So what you want to do on that is to basically play with these settings again. So we've got, you know, in rotation, you just have to make sure you activate only the right options. So we've got, wait 1 second, right. So we take the dynamic out, we take the phase out. I think one of these, when you put them over to the medium amount, it will balance this out. It will balance the settings. Object velocity. Yeah, I'm sure there was one in here. I just cannot remember which one. So we'll put the phase to 0. And then we'll take the randomize to a minimum. Yeah, very interesting that this doesn't seem to be... Okay, object velocity, that's fine. I think we... Oh, right, it's because of this randomize here. Right, okay. So now I've done that, and if you want to turn this away to you, let's just stop the animation. You make sure you've got the plane selected. Let me just get rid of the material. So we've got the object selected. We'll just go into, we want to basically rotate it, yeah? So let's just rotate it, sorry, let's just rotate it to, God, I don't know why my settings went. Right, okay, so now I've rotated and let's play again. So you can see now how it's being generated, yeah? Again, it's still laying flat there, so one of the options that we can do is we can start playing with some of these settings. So the randomized phase that you see here is now starting to twist the form around. I don't know if you can tell. If we decrease the number of lightnings that we generate, you can see it how it's popping into existence in a different shape. So we could probably try and go for 10 seconds, have something like 50 of these coming through, and you can see them just like sort of like jumping around. Okay, let's just go for 5 seconds now. Sorry, 10 seconds. 50. Right, frame start 1. Let's say the frame finishes at 100, so now we get a lot more. Let's just start adding some more of this velocity in here as well. They keep on falling off, so that's because of gravity. So one thing that we can do is go into physics and just make sure the mass is set to... No, sorry, it's not here. Actually, it's in the force field, the field weights, and we'll just set the gravity to nothing. Yeah, so they just keep on generating towards us. So now, again, we just want to play with these settings. The lifetime is rather big. If we take that to 200, for example, I don't like the fact that we can see the plane now for some reason. So it could just be because of the number of, yeah, okay, something like that. I do want to go into the shader editor again and just click on here and have a look a little bit what's going on. Right, okay, yeah. Oh yeah, okay, now I remember. So it's the back face that I've disabled previously. So in the material settings for the untitled mesh, just press the show back face, and now we're actually getting that effect that we wanted. Yeah. So as you can see, we haven't really done much on this sort of you know, on these particles, and already we're getting this result, which, based on what you wanted to achieve with it, you know, it's actually looking quite nice. So we can play with these settings over here, the scale, you know, make it a lot bigger. Look at that. See, now it's just becoming a complete and utter well, what should I say, light fest in there. So I've just decreased the intensity a little bit, trying to make sense of it. Obviously, the more you go, the lower you go on the intensity, it's not gonna look as good. Now remember, these are all flat planes, so it's you know, it's actually quite interesting the way this works, really, if you think about it. As I said, these are all flat planes that we're playing with. Yeah. So that's for the part of creating these you know, this lighting effect over here, right? This is what I'm using for my intro. Basically, this is what I'm working with. Now we'll do a lightning bolt basically in the next phase of the tutorial. So as that animation there is stopped, what we'll do is again Shift A, go to Mesh, and we will select a plane. The plane has now been created over here. I'm just going to press G on the keyboard to move it. Sorry, I'm going to press G on the keyboard, and then I'm going to press the X-axis to just move it on the X-axis, and that's it. Right, so this is what I've got it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into scale, and I'm just going to increase the scale like that, basically, you know, long. I'm going to make it wide as well, something like that. Okay, now with this selected, I'm just going to press File and Export OBJ. I'm going to make sure the selection only is pressed, and then I'm going to make an untitled one and just press Export OBJ. Now I'm going to go back into Substance Painter, going to click File, New, and I'm going to go to, you know, again, 2K, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to press Select, I'm going to select Untitled 1, and then I'm going to press OpenGL here and press OK, and I'm going to discard this one. So we've already got we should already have a UV map created for this, which I'm a bit concerned as I don't think it actually. No, it should be fine. Right, okay, so we've got this mesh here again. The same thing, add new layer in, take opacity to a minimum, put the layer on top. Now one thing that you may want to do here actually is delete that layer that we put on top, add a new layer, yeah, and then just have this opacity to the maximum, go to the emissive, maybe go for that blue tint again. And then basically once you've done that, you're now going to add a black mask, and basically as you paint in, you will be able to see the underlying effect basically. Yeah, so that's another way of doing this basically. This is what I'm trying to say. This is another way of being able to do this. I'm just going to activate this emission again. I'm going to drop the intensity as it's definitely way too high, as you can see. So a bit lower. Okay, so now I want to add lightning basically, and I've got just the alpha for that. So I'm just going to drop the alpha over in here in the shelf. It's going to ask me as what do I want to open it as. So I'm just going to make sure it's an alpha for the current session. So I've just imported it. If you want to see it, this is basically it. I've just used Photoshop on a Thunder photo, just removing everything else and just leaving the alpha in. So now I've got this alpha selected, and I basically want to add it over into our scene. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to press Fill Layer 1, and I'm just going to increase the opacity just a little bit. So now you can see basically how we can just drop this in, something like that, or you know, you can play around with it. Maybe do something like this. Obviously this is an alpha that will repeat itself, so it won't look great. You would want to use multiples. So once I've done that bit, I want to then go into, you know, press X on the keyboard to revert our selections. Go to brush, and then just select whatever, a hard brush of any kind, and just make sure these edges are not exactly touching. It's not going to look great if they touch, is what I'm saying. So you just want to get rid of that basically, these effects. Use a pen, use whatever you need to use to do it. But yeah, I've just removed it, and now let's go back into our new fill layer, take the opacity to a minimum, and this is basically what we've got. Yeah, this is our mesh. So same thing, File, Export Mesh, replace the existing one, and then export textures as well. Make sure we've got metal, this one selected over here. Export 4K, definitely want this as 4K, and these are the maps. Same thing, take it to that, well, you know, wherever you save them into. Select folder and export. Now we just want to go into Blender, if it will open, and what we want to do, oh, sorry about that, I don't know why it's acting up. So we've got this plane over here, which is fine. This is the plane that we want to play with. I've got the plane selected. I'm just gonna go in. I'm just gonna open the shader editor. Make sure that, oh sorry, we need to import the new plane actually, so we can delete this one and we will import the new one, Untitled one. Yeah, okay, so I've got it over here. Same thing, we're just gonna start dropping the maps in. So I've got the emissive over here, and I've got the base color. Yeah, base color, we've got the color going over into here, and the alpha down here. Now what I want to do is add an emission map, connect this, and we want to add a mix shader over here, of which then we connect our maps. Just like that. Yeah. And if we change this to, yeah, you can see it now. Let's press the material button over here and change our blending to alpha blend. And then, you know, we've got show backface in there. Now what we want to do is we want to put our emission, you know, not that high, but still pretty high. Let's just take our opacity like that, and we also would want to rotate, oh sorry about that, let's just make sure we are in median. Want to move it, so you can see on the emissive map we've got a bit of a problem over here. You can see that, yeah, that's because we haven't properly deleted the texture from here. We've got something showing up on our mesh over here, you can see it, right? So if you don't delete these, if you don't wipe them with a brush or something like that, this is what's going to happen. But for our intended purposes here, we can still use this. So the idea behind what I'm trying to do right now is to make this bolt sort of like appear at certain intervals. So let me just make sure that we're looking okay. I want to go into the, you know, over here to transform it, and then we want to rotate by 90 degrees. Oh, sorry, not 90 degrees. We want to rotate by 40. Sorry about that. 180. That's what I want to do. Right. Okay. So I've got that in there. See, I've got all these edges on here as well. You can see them over there. It's because we haven't properly deleted the material from each end, but it's fine. As I said, you'll be able to clean that if you want to. So let me just deactivate seeing the wireframe and these settings, and this is our lightning bolt, and we can go to keyframe 0. And then we can go to visibility and say, you know, press this button over here, press this button that's not visible, and then press these buttons over here, which then means we've saved the position of the mesh by being invisible at this stage. So we move that to, let's say, 5, and we take them back in. Now this is visible. And then we'll go to, I don't know, 7. And we say it's now invisible. And then we go to 10 and we say it's visible, but this time I want its location to have changed a little bit. And here's another trick actually. Press Shift, right click over here. Just make sure you got the, so you can see the 3D cursor is now positioned over there. And what I want to do is I want to be sure I've selected 3D cursor. And when I press, when I press the rotate button, which for some reason won't allow me to rotate. Very interesting. So I'm trying to rotate. Is it because I moved to this? Should allow me. I don't need to be in edit mode for that either, so it should just work. Individual origins. No. Won't allow me to move it. Oh, okay, now it's doing that. I don't know what happened there. Oh, I think I didn't have I didn't have it selected. So shift right click wherever you want to put the pivot point, and now I can just do that basically. And I can also do this. Okay, so we now press I on the keyboard while hovering over these, and that will save the frame as they are. And that's one thing. And then we go to, let's say 16, go back to visibility and just say I don't want to see this anymore. Okay, now let's go back to the beginning of the timeline and press space. And we've got a problem. Now I'll tell you what the problem is. Over on this stage over here, so if we control Z to go back in time, basically, when we made this option, when we keyframe these in, what we didn't do is we didn't save a keyframe to its original position. So where it was right there, we'll just go to we'll just leave it to 14. Sorry, we'll go to 13, and we'll make sure we've keyframed these in. Yeah. So as this comes into, back into shape. By the way, if you make it disappear, you have to reselect it over there. So now we've keyframed this at this position. So let me just have a look. Basically, we've got it appearing, which is fine. Then it appears again. But this is the point where, so when it's appearing again, that's the point that I want it to move. So over at this stage, we want to keyframe this position. And then we also want to say that this is the point where it disappears. Yeah. Again, we've keyframed this in. Now, if we go further to, let's say 15, we want this to show up over now. But we also want it to move its shape a little bit. So let's just make sure we're back into rotation mode. And make sure we've got it selected. Rotate. Maybe do something like this. And then keyframe that in. So now when we go to the beginning and we press space, yeah, something like that. So you want to play with these settings now, so we know it's coming back into, over here, it's appearing, and we go to 16, and we then say, well, it's disappearing again. Yeah, and we keyframe that in. So now we'll go to the beginning, press space, and you can see how it's sort of like moved from one point to the other, right? So that's how you sort of get this animation going. And it's all about timing, so you have to play with the frames in such a way that it gives you, the best possible outcome. And some of the things that you can do, for example, let's say you're on this frame over here when it turns on. So when it turns on, we will say that the emission is 3000, and we'll just press I on the keyboard. Yeah. And then when it goes over here, it shuts down. Sorry, before it shuts down, over here we say the emission is 1000. Like that. And then it shuts off, and then over here it will turn back on. And we say this time around we want it to strike with 5000 emission, which is very high. And then as it shuts down, basically we want the emission to go to 500. I don't know, very radical numbers, right? So it comes in very bright, moves a bit, slows down, disappears, comes in again over here, very bright, you know, something like that. Of course, the frames are so quick you can't even tell. So what you want to do there is you want to play with it, with the settings a little bit, and basically space them out. So if we zoom in on the keyframes over here, we can just sort of take all of these, push them over like that. God, I hate this thing where it makes the lightning bolt disappear. And then we can take these as well. We can take some of these. Something like that. And then when you press space, you've got a bit more, you can see them a bit more, yeah? So anyway, I hope you guys find this useful. This is what I've been working on for the time being. Now, basically, when the tutorial intro is going to show up, you're going to see all of these effects in motion. And right now, I just want to show you a small glimpse of what I've got, you know, of some of the work that I've done on it so far, so you can actually see how this can be put into motion and how it really looks like. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that. This is basically what I'm working on right now. It's my final part of the tutorial for the Leviathan Axe. It's, you know, this animation that I'm working on. It's going to be developed even more. But if you guys enjoyed this video and you found it useful, please leave a like, subscribe, and press the notification bell to know when, you know, when I release new content, as the tutorial for the axe is coming very, very soon. So thank you for watching, and keep on sculpting and developing your dreams.